Millionaire finds his adopted daughter eating from the dog bowl. He froze when he heard what she said. The clatter of metal echoed against marble floors. Daniel Mercer had just stepped into his sleek Pacific Heights mansion, the glass and stone reflecting the golden haze of a San Francisco evening. At 42, dressed sharply in a navy suit with a leather briefcase still in hand. Daniel was used to coming home to warmth. Sometimes cartoons blaring from the living room. Sometimes a quick thump-thump of small feet racing to the door. Sometimes a sweet, high-pitched call of his daughter, Zoe. But today, only silence. His brow furrowed as he slipped off his shoes by the door. Something felt wrong, like the house itself was holding its breath. He set his briefcase down carefully and began walking to the polished hallway, his footsteps oddly loud in the stillness. "Zoe," he called softly. No answer. He turned the corner toward the kitchen, and his breath caught. There, on the cold white tile floor, was Zoe, his 6-year-old daughter. Her small frame was curled near the cabinets like a frightened animal. Her dark skin was smudged with dirt. Her curly hair twisted into two puff ponytails that drooped slightly as if even they were tired. And in front of her, Daniel blinked, convinced at first his eyes deceived him, was a dog's stainless steel bowl. Zoe dipped her tiny, trembling hand into the soggy mess of kibble inside, lifted a chunk to her mouth, and chewed. Her face tightened as if fighting a gag. Still, she forced herself to swallow. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. "Zoe," Daniel's voice cracked. The child froze, wide brown eyes shooting up to him in terror. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to speak, but couldn't. And then another voice cut through the moment, sharp, impatient. "Zoe, what did I tell you? Don't make a mess." Daniel whipped his head toward the doorway. It was Melissa, the nanny, the woman he'd hired, trusted, even praised in front of friends for her professionalism. She wore a crisp white blouse, jeans, and that ever-practiced smile, the one she used for neighbors, for Daniel himself. But it slipped the second she saw him standing frozen in the doorway. "Mr. Mercer," she stammered, "I didn't expect you home today." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked back at Zoe, still crouched on the floor, tears shining on her cheeks. She held her little hands against her stomach, as though to stop its aching growl. His voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Why?" he asked. "Is my daughter eating from a dog bowl?" Melissa gave a nervous laugh. "Oh," she spilled her lunch. "You know how she is, always playing rough. I told her not to waste food. Kids these days. I asked you a question." Daniel's tone turned to steel. Melissa's eyes flickered. For a moment, she held her mask in place. But then cracks formed. She shrugged, scoffed lightly, and finally muttered, "She was hungry, and she's always so fussy. We were out of the snacks she likes. I said if she was really starving, she could try the dog food. I didn't think she'd actually do it." Daniel felt something inside him splinter. "She's 6, he whispered, taking a step forward. "She's 6. She's adopted. She's black in a white family. Do you have any idea what this does to her? Do you understand how deeply this could scar her?" Melissa rolled her eyes, the last shreds of her facade gone. "Oh, come on, Daniel. Don't make this about race. She's not made of glass. You're the one who wanted to adopt a charity case." Silence. Suffocating. Electric silence. Zoe looked up slowly, trembling. Her small voice, broken and trembling, filled the kitchen. "I'm not really your daughter," she whispered. "Just your good deed." Daniel's chest constricted. His heart shattered like glass against stone. Melissa, oblivious or uncaring, went on. "Honestly, I've had enough. She's always crying, always so sensitive. I've raised kids, and I've never had one act like this." Daniel's fists curled at his sides, his jaw clenched. His eyes never left Zoe's face. Tear-stained, stained shirt, frayed jeans at the knees, like she hadn't been cared for in days. "What else?" he asked gently, kneeling to her level. "Did she tell you?" Zoe's bottom lip quivered. She rubbed her small fist against her eyes, then whispered. She said, "I'm lucky to live here. That if I keep being a brat, you'll send me back. And if I ask for food again, she'll make me sleep in the garage. With the dog." Daniel's blood went cold. Melissa's voice snapped sharp, brittle. All right, that's enough. She's lying now. Drama queen, that's what she is. Always twisting words. Daniel turned his head slowly, his glare slicing like glass. Melissa, he said quietly. Get out. Her eyes widened. Excuse me. You're fired. His voice was low but final. Pack your things. And pray I don't press charges. Melissa's face twisted, half fury, half disbelief. You'll regret this, Daniel. You think that girl's grateful? She'll ruin you. You'll see what a burden she really is. She spun on her heel, storming out. The slam of the door echoed through the mansion. Daniel dropped to his knees. He was eye level with Zoe now. She stared at him, her breathing shaky, her cheeks blotchy and red. And still, unbelievably, she tried to smile. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she whispered. Daniel's throat burned. He pulled her into his arms, holding her small body against his chest. Zoe, he said, his voice breaking, listen to me. You're not trouble. You're my daughter. You're loved. No one gets to make you feel small in this house. Her big brown eyes searched his face uncertainly. Even if I mess up? Especially then, Daniel said. Zoe's tiny body shook as sobs tore free. She buried her face into his suit jacket, clutching him as though he might disappear if she let go. Daniel held her tighter, swearing under his breath he would never let her feel this way again. And yet a whisper tugged at the back of his mind. This wasn't the full story. Something darker had taken root in his home while he was away, and he was about to find out just how deep the betrayal ran. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the guest room with Zoe curled against his side, her tiny hand clutching the silk of his tie, as if it were an anchor in a storm. He stroked her curls softly until her sobs slowed, then stilled into shallow, uneven breaths. Every time her body flinched in sleep, his chest ached. Melissa was gone, but her words lingered like poison. Charity case. Send her back. Burden. Words Zoe had heard, words she had believed. Daniel stared into the dark ceiling, the weight of guilt pressing into him. How long had this been happening under his roof? He was a man who prided himself on control, on precision, yet he'd missed the one place control mattered most, his daughter's safety. By dawn, he'd made a decision. He wouldn't just take Melissa's cruelty at Zoe's word. He owed his daughter the truth, the proof, the kind of certainty that would never again allow anyone to dismiss her pain. He was going to find out exactly what had been happening in his home. That morning, after walking Zoe to her classroom and giving her a hug that lingered far too long for any ordinary school day, Daniel returned to the mansion. He strode straight past the quiet luxury of the foyer, the leather chairs, the curated art pieces. His destination was a room most people never saw, his office, where his wall of monitors linked to the property security system. Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then he began pulling up footage. Hours rolled by. The first clips cut into him like glass shards. Zoe sitting quietly in the kitchen while Melissa texted on her phone, her tiny voice asking for water. Ignored. Melissa setting a plate of fresh meat in the dog's bowl while sliding an old half-eaten sandwich toward Zoe. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept watching. Then, another video. Rain streaking against the glass patio doors. Zoe's small body outside, drenched, her fists pounding weakly against a locked door. Melissa sat inside the warm living room, flipping through a magazine unaffected. Daniel slammed his fist on the desk. God. But the worst came hours later. Melissa in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. Phone pressed to her ear. Her voice sharp, irritated. You were right, she hissed into the receiver. The brat's eating out of a bowl now. The millionaire's totally clueless. Daniel froze. His fingers danced over the keyboard, amplifying the audio, isolating the faint background hum until a voice came through on the other end. A voice he knew, faint but unmistakable. Isabella, the fiancée's shadow. Daniel's breath left him in a rush. His fiancée, Isabella, the woman he'd met 2 years ago at a fundraiser, all laughter and confidence, charming his colleagues and friends with ease. Isabella, who smiled politely at Zoe in public, who complimented her dresses, who once brushed her hair, so roughly Daniel had stepped in. Isabella, who said things like, "You're doing too much, Daniel. She's not your savior." And now this. Daniel replayed the footage, as if daring it to change, as if daring it to say he'd misunderstood. But no, it was clear. Isabella had known. She had encouraged Melissa. His chest burned. Fury, betrayal, guilt. All at once, a storm raging in his ribs. He grabbed his phone. When Isabella answered, her voice was smooth, unsuspecting. "Daniel, you're calling early. I thought you were." I saw the footage he cut in, his voice low, sharp as a blade. A pause. Then a careful laugh. "What footage?" "Of Melissa. And you." Silence. Then a sigh. Not denial. Not surprise. Just annoyance. "Daniel," Isabella said, her tone shifting, cool and cutting. "She's not even your blood. You don't owe her your life. You want to feel good about yourself. That's all this was. And that kid, she'll never fit in. You were trying to make a family where there isn't one." Daniel closed his eyes, bile rising in his throat. Then his voice came, ice over fire. "You're right." Isabella perked up slightly. "Finally, you—" "She's not my blood," Daniel finished. "She's better. She's my heart. And you? You're nothing to us." Before Isabella could respond, he ended the call. The silence afterward rang louder than any words. The confession. That night, Daniel sat with Zoe on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She was freshly bathed, dressed in soft pajamas, her curls sweet-scented and free of the tangles Melissa never bothered to comb. Zoe held her stuffed bunny close, but her eyes still carried shadows too heavy for a 6-year-old. "Daddy," she asked timidly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything," Daniel said, forcing his voice gentle. "If I was your real daughter, would I get to eat from a plate?" The words hit him like a punch. His vision blurred as his throat burned. He cupped her face in both hands, making sure she saw nothing but truth in his eyes. "You are my real daughter," he whispered, "and you will never eat from anything but the finest plate again. Not because of wealth, but because you matter. You matter, Zoe." Her lips trembled. She nodded once, then crawled into his lap, clutching his shirt until sleep claimed her. Daniel sat motionless, his arms wrapped around her small frame, his heart pounding with a vow he would never break. This house would never again be a place of fear for her. Not while he breathed. The days that followed were unlike any Daniel Mercer had lived before. For the first time in years, his calendar cleared. Meetings, calls, dinners, all canceled. His assistant panicked at first, but Daniel silenced her with a single line. "My daughter comes first." He meant it. The mornings began with the scent of pancakes and the hum of jazz in the background. Daniel, a man once too consumed with boardrooms and investors to ever cook more than scrambled eggs, found himself flipping golden stacks of batter while Zoe sat at the counter, swinging her legs and watching him with curious eyes. He made her laugh, intentionally burning one pancake, then sliding it onto her plate with a flourish. The legendary Mercer special, charcoal crisp. She giggled, covering her mouth, her laughter spilling like sunshine into corners of the mansion that had long felt cold. After breakfast, he walked her to school himself, hand in hand, ignoring the whispers of other parents who stared at the millionaire in his tailored suit kneeling to tie his little girl's shoe. He attended therapy sessions with her, sitting quietly as she learned to put words to the wounds left by Melissa's cruelty. Sometimes Zoe cried. Sometimes she refused to speak at all. But Daniel stayed, his steady presence a promise. "I'm not going anywhere." And slowly, Zoe began to bloom again. One evening, she appeared from the playroom wearing a paper crown, cut from gold construction paper and decorated with uneven stickers. She placed it solemnly on his head. "You're the best daddy in the world," she declared. Daniel grinned, pretending to bow. "And you, Zoe Mercer, are my little queen." Her laughter filled the house again. For the first time in weeks, Daniel dared to believe they were healing. The wound beneath, but not every night was easy. Sometimes, Daniel woke to find Zoe curled at the foot of his bed, clutching her bunny as if it could keep her safe. Other times, He found her sitting silently by the kitchen, staring at the cabinet where the dog bowl once sat, her small hands gripping the edge of her pajama shirt. He would kneel beside her then, lifting her gently into his arms. "No one," he whispered into her curls, "will ever put you down there again." And each time, she clung tighter. The world learns the truth. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Heavy parchment, embossed with a seal he hadn't seen in years. The Mercer Foundation, the charity board his late father had established. Daniel broke the seal, eyes scanning the letter, and as he read, his throat tightened. The board had learned what happened in his home. The adoption, the betrayal, the cruelty uncovered, and his fierce defense of Zoe. They wrote of being moved, inspired, and determined to act. They had voted unanimously to create a new branch in Zoe's name, the Zoe Mercer Project, a nationwide initiative to protect adopted and foster children from neglect and abuse. Daniel lowered the letter slowly, his hands trembling. Zoe, perched on the couch beside him, tilted her head. "What's wrong, Daddy?" He smiled through wet eyes, pulling her close. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Something's very, very right." The event was held in a grand ballroom overlooking the bay. Chandeliers sparkled above rows of journalists, philanthropists, and social workers. Banners with Zoe's name stretched across the walls. The Zoe Mercer Project, protecting every child. Daniel stood at the podium, his suit crisp, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "This isn't about wealth," he said. "It's about responsibility. Every child deserves safety. Every child deserves love. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure my daughter, and children like her, never feel unwanted again." The crowd erupted in applause, but Daniel barely heard it. His eyes were on Zoe, standing proudly at his side, holding his hand. She wore a pink dress, her curls bouncing, a crown of fresh daisies resting gently on her head. When the cameras flashed, the world didn't see a millionaire and an adopted girl from different backgrounds. They saw a father and daughter, a family bound not by blood, but by something stronger. That night, long after the event ended, Daniel tucked Zoe into bed. She was half asleep, clutching her bunny, her eyelids heavy. "Daddy," she murmured. "Yes, baby." She blinked up at him, her voice fragile but clear. "Do you think someday I'll forget?" The dog bowl. Daniel's throat tightened. He leaned down, brushing a kiss across her forehead. "You'll never forget," he admitted softly, "but you'll grow stronger than the memory. And I'll be here, always." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "Always, always," he whispered. Her breathing slowed, steady and soft. Daniel sat beside her bed for a long time, watching his daughter sleep, the shadows no longer so heavy. And in that quiet he swore again, this time not to himself, but to the universe, to every force that might listen. No one would ever make Zoe Mercer feel less than whole. Not while he lived. Months passed. The mansion felt different now. Warmer. Laughter spilled from the halls. Paintings Zoe made in art class hung on the refrigerator door, their crayon colors clashing proudly with the stainless steel. The smell of pancakes lingered most mornings. Daniel had stepped back from his business empire, investing instead in the Zoe Mercer Project. He traveled with Zoe to shelters, to adoption agencies, to schools, always hand in hand, always together. And slowly, his daughter's eyes stopped carrying the weight of old shadows. One afternoon, Zoe sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring with fierce concentration. She glanced up suddenly and asked, "Daddy?" "Yes, my queen." She smiled a gap-toothed grin. "I'm glad you picked me." Daniel's heart swelled. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her curls. "No, Zoe," he whispered. "You picked me." And in that sunlit room, surrounded by crayons and laughter, the truth settled like a crown on both their heads. They were no longer broken. They were a family,